Hello. In this video series, I'm going to talk about a model of consumer behavior. That is, how people make the decision to make a purchase. And so we want to understand how people decide what to purchase. In this case, a spirit, bourbon, rum, tequila, gin, whatever. So that we can understand then how our firm can influence that decision and in turn help our retailer. Remember, the wholesaler and the retailer ultimately want what the same thing we want, which is to sell the product to a consumer and to develop a repeat customer. That is, a customer who will come back to that retailer and purchase our product again. And so to understand that and develop as part of our marketing strategy, we want to understand how people decide what to purchase. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through a 5-step model. So this is the basic model. It starts with a need recognition. That is, we have a problem. This is sometimes referred to as drive state. It can sometimes be referred to as stimulus. And then we're going to conduct a search for information. We're going to have an evaluation of alternatives based on that search of information. We'll make a decision on what to purchase, and then we'll make some evaluations of what the heck we bought. So there can be different ways that we've established a need recognition. It could be that our bar is empty, or we're out of bourbon, or we finished the last particular bottle of gin and we need to buy more. It could be that we tried the product at a bar, we liked it so much that we wanted to go out and buy it. Or maybe we have friends coming over, or we have our boss coming over and we want to impress them. And we know our boss likes Gentleman Jack, so we want to make sure that we have what the boss wants. Or maybe we're having a dinner party. I would argue that I think one of the things that will come back, and I think it's going to come back with a vengeance after we all get vaccinated and we get to herd immunity, I think we're going to see the return of the dinner party. I think people will want to entertain, but in a small gathering. That is, to have 2 people over, or 4 or 6. Or maybe it's we just took a class and maybe one of the professors, or both, who knows, convinced us to try something or said, hey, that's pretty interesting. I didn't know that about Mezcal. I'd kind of like to try that. Or maybe we saw an ad, or we heard people talking about it, or we read a review. Those can all be things that establish a need recognition. Now, as you can see in the model, in the text in blue, are the things that you can do, that your distillery could do to stimulate need recognition. That is, really you want to do some promotion here to help with that need recognition. It can be in the form of buying an advertisement in, say, a local magazine or a local website. It could be in an email campaign or through your website. You should establish a website. And it could also be through your social media channels or providing content to other social media channels. So we can think of social media that we control as owned media. We can think of media when we pass that message along to somebody else who says, oh my gosh, that is a great bourbon. Wow, Kentucky rum, that's tasty. That is earned. We can also pay for it. Say when somebody does a Google search for Kentucky rum, our brand pops to the top. And that can all lead to need recognition. And we call that, by the way, that when we pay for that insertion as ads, when we do a search, that's paid media. So we can talk about owned, earned, and paid social media. At that point, once we've established that we need a bourbon, a tequila, a gin, we would do a search for information. Now, typically we're going to rely on memory. Hey, I bought a bottle of Tanqueray. That was pretty good. I had guests over. They all seemed to like it. Or, wow, I bought that bottle of Rebecca Creek bourbon mix, whiskey mix, and that was not good. I need to find something else. We might look on social media sites. Are there any reviews out there? Is anybody talking about it? We might look on the distiller's website. Or We might ask the liquor store clerk, hey, what do you recommend? Here's what's happening. I'm having a dinner party and I want to make some martinis for everybody, but I don't really know that much about gin. And I took a class in the stuff, but I kind of forgot what they talked about when it came to gin. You might even read the bottle's label. And I've said to a few of the groups, this is one of the things that really drives me up a wall, especially about gins. The gins just don't bother to explain what's in the bottle, and it leaves me to guess what the heck I'm going to get. And quite frankly, I don't know that I want to risk $35, $40, $50 on a bottle of gin that I'm not really sure what's going to happen when I open it. Who knows? Genie comes out. There's a root in there. It's possible. Now, I say that I did read the label of Rebecca Creek. I knew that it was mixed. It even said that it was mixed 22% with a base spirit. Yes, I knew that base spirit was vodka. It can't be anything else. And I still bought it. And in case you're wondering, what would it taste like if I were to mix bourbon about 78% and 22% of vodka? What would I get? It tastes a lot like bourbon flavored vodka, quite frankly. It was one of the few bottles that I've never been able to finish in my entire life. I did keep it just as a memento of my bad decision-making prowess. You might even send a note to Dr. Tansey or to me and say, hey, I ran out of bourbon. I want to try something new. Or I'm thinking about experimenting with Irish whiskeys. What would you recommend beyond the Bushmill and the Jameson? Well, how could I get out of that? In terms of your distillery, not only could your promotion efforts help with search for information, but also your product. That is the bottle, the packaging, the label design, especially on a gin or a rum. Tell me what I can expect when I open it. And don't give me nonsensical languages of being transported to a field of daisies. Tell me, this is going to have this and this and this, and that means that you can expect this taste in the gin. Oh, okay. It sounds like it will make a great gin and tonic. Doesn't sound like it's going to be good for a dirty martini. Now I have a decision to make. Or if it's a rum, tell me what I'm getting. Is this going to be dry or is it going to be sweet? We're not even going to venture into flavor rums. Also, the place can also be used as a search for information. Not only the type of store you're selling, there is a difference between arena liquor. And if you haven't been to Arena Liquor or the Giant Eagle, the Market District in Upper Arlington or Grandview, I would encourage you to go. Those are experimental stores. They have things that you can't find at a lot of other stores in Columbus, but they have a very different arrangement of their shelf compared to the state stores elsewhere in the city. Shelf position also can be used as our search for information. Where are you positioned on the shelf? What's next to you? What are you far away from? We can also use price as part of that search for information. So if I know that I'm getting a $60 bourbon, okay, that's probably what I'm expecting for a pretty serviceable craft spirit bourbon. But if you try to tell me it's a $60 bottle of Irish whiskey, I'm probably calling suspect on that. And if you're trying to convince me to part with $60 in return for a Canadian whiskey, there is just simply no chance that's happening. So we can use price not only in relative to our competitors, that is, how are you priced comparable to, say, the mid-shelf, the product leader, or to another craft distillery, but also, how are you priced within that product category? Again, a $60 bottle of Canadian whiskey, there's really not a chance for that. A $60 bottle of bourbon, a $60 bottle of single malt scotch, that sounds expected, and I would say proceed. We then develop a set of alternatives. Now, what we call sets. There is the universal set, that is all possible brands within this defined area, all possible brands of bourbon, all possible brands of rum, gin, tequila. Whether you know they exist or not is irrelevant in the universal set. The universal set is the set of all possible brands that exist. Then there's the awareness set. That is a subset of the universal set. That is, these are brands that you are aware of. Whether you've tried them or not, it doesn't matter. You simply know they exist. You may have some type of knowledge of them, some type of opinion of them, regardless of whether you've used them. That is back to the previous video on branding, this idea of cognitive, affective, and behavioral. And then we move from the awareness set, that is the brands we're aware of, into the consideration set. And that's what you're aiming to be in, is the consideration set. Am I willing to purchase you? I am aware that Jim Beam White Label exists. I am aware that Evan Williams Black Label exists. There's not a whole chance that I'm going to consider purchasing that. I think the only time that I've actually ever purchased, I should limit, in the last 30 years or so, the only time that I have purchased Jim Beam White, I was probably at a beer and a shot bar. And when you're at a beer and a shot bar, you never want to be that person who starts asking the bartender to get all fancy with the drinks and asking how locally sourced and handcrafted is that tonic before you order the gin and tonic. Please don't be that person. Please, please, please don't be that person. You're at a beer and shot place. You know exactly what you're getting. And that's when you can get adventurous. And I probably was at a beer and shot place and there wasn't a whole lot of room to be adventurous, and I ordered Jim Beam White. Then we have the final subset, the purchase set. What are we willing to consider and what are we willing to actually purchase? So this, in evaluation of the alternatives, we're winnowing from all the possible brands out there all the way down to the purchase set. And the purchase set may only contain 2 or 3 brands. That is what we're actually willing to pick up off the shelf, put in our basket, and carry up to the front of the store and ring out with the clerk. At this point, you can influence this decision with your product. Because at this point, you're probably got a consumer who's standing at the shelf in the retailer trying to make a decision. And so your best bet to intercept this, to influence this decision, is your product. That is the packaging, the label design. Does it stand out on the shelf? What, again, does the brand communicate? If you are to be this modern bourbon that is throwing off the myths and getting rid of the bullshit associated with bourbon, then that package, including the bottle design and the label design, needs to communicate that. I should see something in a clean font with vibrant colors. But I also should be able to read something on the back. What in the heck am I about to get into? What's your mash bill? Is it 22% vodka and 78% bourbon? Because never, never, never again will I ever make that decision. My daughter simply won't allow me to make that decision. And so we also have place. Remember, where is it on the shelf? Because we're standing at the shelf trying to make a decision. And so that's also going to influence that purchase set. Now, we also may be limited by, say, our funds or our knowledge. And so we're guided to one spot on the shelf. This goes back to that need recognition. My boss is coming over. I want to impress my boss. I better look up toward the upper tops of the shelf. I've got some friends over, their tastes aren't well cultivated. They don't really care so long as it's got some alcohol in it. They're good. I'm going to look toward the bottom of the shelf. Again, the Old Crow is always a good choice in that scenario. And then finally, your price can also influence that purchase set. You just may not be up for spending $50 on a bottle of rum. Whether you know the bottle or not, it doesn't matter. You just may not be up for it. Or you may think, wow, that's really kind of pricey for rum. I think I'm going to go back over to where there was the middle shelf. So these 3 elements, this evaluation of alternatives, most likely is occurring at the store. That's where the decision's happening, not before you walk into the store. Then we move into purchase. Step 1, give the clerk money. Step 2, take your bottle. I neglected to put step 3, leave store. Step 4, have fun. So neglected the crucial step 3, step 4. So to review, step 1, Give the clerk money. Step 2, take the bottle from the clerk. Don't try taking the bottle first and then giving money. Something bad could happen. Step 3, leave. Don't do step 3 first. Make sure you've first given the money, step 1, and step 2, you've picked up the bottle. Then step 3, leave. Step 4, and this is the most crucial step of the whole 4-step process of purchase, have fun. It's fun. It's fundamentally fun. I promise. It's enjoyable. You'll have a good time. Don't indulge or overindulge. Indulge, but don't overindulge. And then finally, we can influence the purchase based on the price. Price can influence which one we do pick up. And this is absolutely going to occur at store. And finally, we have post-purchase. We get home, we try it, we give it to the boss. Boss said, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing scotch. What is this? Wow, this is really tasty. And your esteem in the boss's eyes has just improved. Please let Dr. Tansey and I know when you get promoted. We promise we won't tell advancement that you got a raise and that you are now willing to give more money to Otterbein. We promise we won't. We'll just toast your good fortune. Or in the case of Rebecca Creek, you may find out, oh my God, I made a horrible, horrible decision, which you then can share in class and say, ooh, read the label. It matters. So we have this post-purchase evaluation. Did we make a good purchase or not? And not just did we make a good purchase, yes, no, but did we make a good purchase in relation to our need recognition? Was this a good purchase to serve at our dinner party? Was this a good purchase for us to enjoy at home? Or was this a good purchase? We tried it at the bar, but gosh, it just wasn't that great when we got home. I often tell the story of when I was on campus visits. And when you're on a campus visit on the job market, you fly pretty much last minute, like on 3 days' notice. And as you would imagine, the airline ticket is pretty expensive. And because it's pretty expensive, in fact, you're probably the only person on the plane who's been paid, whose ticket costs the full freight. When there's an empty seat, they put you in first class. And I even learned to start asking for it. Hey, is there an upgrade to first class? Because they knew my ticket was full fare. None of this super saver discount nonsense. And so most of the time, I flew in first class. I got a free upgrade. And when you fly first class, the first thing they're going to ask you is, would you like a drink? And that's, well, sure, I can find something to drink on a bar cart on an airline. And I would ask for a scotch and soda. And it was by far and away the best scotch and soda I have ever drank in my life. Now, I did fly different airlines. I flew a variety of airlines and experienced the same thing. So this is science. We have an experiment going. And I was able to replicate the results on multiple airlines. And I would get home, and after a while I thought, gosh, I would like to make that and have that experience at home. And in the interest of science, I did try, but I was never able to replicate that experience at 36,000 feet, and which is what I concluded. There is something about the mixture of 36,000 feet and Dewar's White Label and Canada Dry Club soda that I cannot replicate on the ground. But that's part of the post-purchase evaluation. Did this resolve that need recognition? And we can influence that in our distillery with advertising, email, as a reminder, hey, in the good times, or when you want to celebrate, or hey, try this when you go out next time. We can use these as reminders to influence how people felt. Nobody wants to feel like they made a bad decision, or for the money I gave up, I don't really feel like I got a whole lot of value associated with this. And I can tell you that there are some really good Irish whiskeys at $45. I can also tell you there's some really bad Irish whiskeys at $40. But that all comes back to the post-purchase evaluation. And the post-purchase evaluation, in some ways, is crucial, the most crucial step in this process, because it will influence our need recognition. I know to read, I know not to buy Rebecca Creek. I know there are certain brands just I want to avoid. Or in the case of Canadian whiskey product categories, I am most likely to avoid. It also will influence our search for information. If we made a good choice, we're going to store that in memory. And that's what we're going to rely on. And it's going to be really hard to shake you. This is where we develop those habitual buyers. People who I always buy Knob Creek. Oh, they've got Knob Creek in. I have to buy Knob Creek. They're relying on memory because they have a positive post-purchase evaluation. Or maybe they just bought us out of whim. Something to try, something different. They wanted to impress their friends. I found this distillery. Nobody's ever heard of it yet. Here, try this. And somebody tries this and they recall, oh my God, my friends were delighted. It reinforced my image as a bourbon expert. The next time I go to the store, I'm going to buy this. It also will influence our evaluation of alternatives. Are you willing to buy this again? Are you willing to consider this, but only in relation to other brands? Gosh, if the only thing they have is white label, I guess that's all I'll buy. And of course, it's going to influence our purchase decision. If we had a good experience, we're tend to replicate and we'll buy it again. But if we have a bad experience, we're unlikely to do that. This is also why the MASH bill is so crucial. Because remember, the MASH bill is delivering the promise of the brand. And you play with that MASH bill and you don't tell the customer, the consumer. Then they buy it and there's something funny tasting about the product all of a sudden. It's not the same. They've changed it. Some of you talked about Maker's Mark and the lowering of the proof. Beefeaters, I pointed out, has done something similar this summer. And I happen to like Beefeater's gin, predominantly form variations of martinis. And there are lots of variations of the martini. Most of them don't require, in fact, none of them require flavorings per se. But Beefeaters, to me, makes a really good dry martini, makes a very good sweet martini, makes a very good dirty martini. It also makes a very good Gibson. But they've changed the proof. They've lowered it. And so that alters my purchase decision. I don't know that I'm going to be as willing to purchase Beefeaters in the future. In fact, I actually tend to doubt it because it's no longer delivering on that promise. This is how brand intersects with consumer decision making. So our complete model looks like this from a consumer behavior perspective. Now remember, you also have to sell to your intermediate customer, your wholesaler and your retailer. They want a compelling reason to buy. And I'll talk about that in a different video. What is the retailer's motivation to purchase us? And we'll talk about that in a different video. But in this video, I've talked about a model of consumer behavior. That is how consumers make a decision and walk through 5 steps and what goes on in the consumer's mind. And in turn, as the distillery, as the marketer, how can you influence the consumer at those stages and in the different ways that you can?